This is one of the oldest SpongeBob theories that's been floating around for too long on the internet. The idea that everyone in Bikini Bottom is on Yeah, that's a real thing people talk about. Now, I've seen a lot of strange theories before. Some are brilliant, some are ridiculous. But this one's different from the others because it just doesn't make any sense. But don't worry, I'm willing to put big money on this bet to prove it's pure nonsense. So I'm putting this theory to the test. Not to prove it wrong, that's the easy part, but to ask something bigger. Why do people keep inventing darker meanings for something that was already so full of life? Because if there's one thing I've learned from doing these dives, it's that the wildest theories often reveal more about us than they do about SpongeBob. So, if everyone in Bikini Bottom is secretly addicted to something, how exactly does that work? Well, according to this theory, it's all right there, hiding in plain sight, right in their daily habits. The first and most obvious one is SpongeBob himself. Hyperactive, erratic, and just smiles, even when he's being roasted.
How about you cast out over there so I can ignore you?
Okay.
It feels like he sees things other people can't. The smiling sun, living spatulas, even things from his imagination that make no sense to anyone else. And that's when the theory makes its first connection. SpongeBob could represent psychedelics, specifically shrooms. A that loves to bend reality, amplifies emotion, and makes everything around you glow with impossible joy. And honestly, I can see the resemblance. Every frame of SpongeBob's world is brighter, more colorful, and more alive than reality, especially if you compare it to someone like Squidward.
I have no soul.
He sees the best in everything. To him, even flipping patties is a transcendent experience. It's not a bad metaphor for someone tripping on happiness.
I'm ready!
Yeah, no regular person loves his job like that, especially one with low wages and long-hour shifts. Think about it. Low pay, long hours, constant humiliation, 25 years of failing a driver's test, and he still bounces out of bed like the sun owes him money. If anything, it's somewhat believable that the whole reason SpongeBob is always high on energy, despite his bad environment, is because he's always high on shrooms. Then there's the opposite side of energetic. Patrick, SpongeBob's best friend, or, according to this context, his partner in crime.
It's the perfect crime!
He moves slow, talks slower, his brain also works slow. Throughout the show, his only consistent goals in life are food, sleep, and doing whatever he fancies that particular day. Is Patrick just dumb, or is he always high on weed? Because weed does give chronic relaxation, increased appetite, short-term memory slips, and the kind of lazy euphoria where doing nothing is the plan.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
We could argue that Patrick's behavior totally mirrors the symptoms of someone who's perpetually stoned. It's funny and kind of makes sense if you think about it. I mean, it's one thing to be dumb in Bikini Bottom, that's no special feat. But no one in this city is as slow and chill as Patrick. He's also a very lazy person, never wanting to do anything besides laying down on top of his rock and enjoying the moment. The possibilities are high. And if SpongeBob and Patrick are the highs, then Squidward is the low. Squidward's world is always harsh, dreadful, and gloomy. He always feels tired, cynical, and constantly angry. One of the first impressions we get from Squidward is that he hates everything in his life. He always believes he's destined to be something bigger, an artist, a musician, and yet he's trapped in the body of a cashier. In some way, Squidward represents someone using heroin. Now, I know for a fact that a lot of you will say this theory is being too cruel in Squidward's case. I mean, his life is miserable enough as it is. Now he's an addict too? How low will this guy go? But ironically, this is where the theory starts to hook people. Because with opioid substances, his emotional pain starts to feel intentional. Opioids can bring brief euphoria and numbness, but long-term use often means fatigue, low motivation, and constricted emotional range. Basically a grayness that never leaves. And if we connect that to Squidward being stuck in a cycle of dependency, brief moments of escape through art, followed by numbness, exhaustion, and despair from constantly chasing a joy he can't sustain, it could be the result of long-term heroin use. maybe the reason why he can't make a breakthrough in his art career is because the depression loop keeps swallowing him. It's uncomfortably dark, and yet again, somewhat makes sense. Because at least this explains the situation Squidward is in. There's no way out from here unless he lets go of those drugs. On the flip side, the next pair of characters feel like people whose drugs actually helps them function. You see, Eugene Krabs and Mrs. Puff are known to be energetic characters, but for a whole different reason than SpongeBob. Krabs' fast-talking, yelling, and aggressive trait comes from chasing money like his life depends on it. He's also obsessed and paranoid about the possibilities of Plankton stealing his secret recipe. Like, the man has no chill. As for Mrs. Puff, she basically has PTSD every morning. These days she panics at every turn, hallucinates danger, and practically loses her mind when she hears SpongeBob's name. You can see where this is going. They use cocaine. There's a big possibility that both of their over-the-top reactions and paranoia are symptoms of a mind running in overdrive. Cocaine basically runs their brains so fast, it's eating them alive. And when you pair that with their backstory, it gets even stickier. Krabs is a Navy veteran. In the real world, after major conflicts, you see waves of self-medication, historically leading to morphine or heroin dependence with earlier wars, or from amphetamines like Benzedrine. There's also the cocaine boom, which hit later in the 70s and 80s. So, if you squint hard enough, you can kind of see how the theory applies. Maybe Krabs' hypervigilance is a maladapted veteran reflex, and Puff's panic is the teacher's trauma response gone nuclear, both pointing to the stimulant metaphor. Though, in Mrs. Puff's case, I kinda understand her situation, you know? Who wouldn't go crazy after dealing with lunatics behind the wheel for 25 years? She doesn't even need cocaine to feel paranoia. In a way, it also feels kinda poetic for this couple. Two cocaine addicts trapped in a codependent relationship, love and paranoia, hand in hand.
We've been dating for 16 years now.
But if all this somehow fits together, then who's the real addict? Who's the one connecting them all? It's Gary. Sweet little Gary, SpongeBob's pet snail. Always calm until you forget to feed him. In one episode, he becomes completely obsessed with a snack called snail bites. He'll do anything for them. Hiss, growl, even manipulate SpongeBob. And that's where the theory finds its final puzzle piece. Gary could be the final boss of addictions. He just can't get enough of his treats, toys, anything that triggers his addiction. In behavioral science, that's classic reward circuitry. Dopamine spikes, habit loops, operant conditioning. Truth be told, Gary might not just be addicted to one specific drug. He'll take anything to keep him high. But hey, maybe that's why he's so smart in the first place. It sounds ridiculous, right? But you can feel why people buy it. Every personality has a chemical explanation. Every emotion finds a side effect. And somehow, it works. Almost too well. Because the more this possibility clicks into place, the more one thing becomes obvious. Every symptom the theory points to is already explained by the show itself. And the moment you remember that, the whole illusion starts to crack piece by piece. You know what I find funny? The more this theory tries to explain SpongeBob, the more it actually disrespects it. Because yeah, sure, it sounds clever at first. Each drug neatly matching a character trait, every symptom forming a tidy little circle. But when you actually think about it, it feels less like analysis and more like a shortcut. Let's start with the easiest target, SpongeBob. They say he's tripping on shrooms because he's too happy, too imaginative, too bright. But that's literally his point. He's high on life. He's what childhood looks like when you never grow out of wonder. In fact, the whole show was built on that idea. Innocent imagination as a resistance to cynicism. He's proof that you can live in the same world as Squidward and still see rainbows instead of storms. Patrick, on the other hand, they say he's always stoned, lazy, slow, always eating. But that's just proof of comfort. His situation comes from having little to no expectations. He's that friend who doesn't need much to be happy. He's that friend who finds peace in doing nothing, who reminds you that not every day needs a grand purpose. The man literally won an award for doing nothing longer than anyone else.
So, what are you gonna do now?
I'm gonna go protect my title.
And then there's Squidward, the one that this theory tries to make tragic. They paint him like a heroin addict, stuck in a loop of pleasure and despair, but the truth is so much simpler, and so much sadder. Squidward is just disillusioned. He's the artist who never made it, the adult who thought he'd be special and woke up in a dead-end job. His pain never comes from a chemical. Quite the contrary, it comes from recognition, realizing the world doesn't care about your dreams. Even I could argue his bitterness is the most adult, human-like trait in this show. So when you turn him into a junkie, you actually erase the most human part of the show. Then we've got Mr. Krabs and Mrs. Puff. The theory says they're both on cocaine, but we all know the answer. Krabs' paranoia is basically amplified insecurity. He's a man terrified of losing what he's built, a greedy businessman clinging to his wealth. Then again, being the cheapest crustacean in the 7 seas is his goal.
Hello, I like money.
Paranoia is basically a sixth sense for the capitalist. And Mrs. Puff? Come on, she doesn't even need a stimulant to panic. She's living a teacher's nightmare that never ends, handling a single, unfixable student who's almost killed her hundreds of times. And honestly, isn't that what makes her relatable? Because who hasn't been one SpongeBob away from losing their mind? Even Gary, the supposed true addict, falls apart under scrutiny. Yes, he becomes obsessed with treats, but he's a pet. He's just acting like a cat obsessed with catnip, or a dog tearing up the couch for kibble. I mean, don't we all want something to keep us going in life? Gary's clearly got his. So yeah, the drug theory is catchy, maybe even fun to joke about, but the second you look closer, it falls apart faster than Plankton's plan. It takes away real writing, genuine character complexity, and strips it down to a meme. It's the easiest way to sound deep without saying much. They built complete, complex characters, designed their interactions, their dynamics, how they respond to each other's shenanigans, and we're gonna say it's just all because of drugs. Besides, I don't think SpongeBob's characters need chemical explanations to make sense. They already do. They're exaggerated versions of us, of how we handle life's chaos. SpongeBob represents joy through imagination, Patrick, peace through simplicity, Squidward, pain through disappointment, Krabs, control through greed, Puff, fear through trauma, Gary, loyalty through dependence. The writers didn't need to trip to invent it, they just needed to understand people. You know what makes this whole thing even funnier? If you look at why SpongeBob exists in the first place, the entire theory collapses into a single line. Because Steven Hillenburg, the guy who created SpongeBob, he was a marine biologist, an actual teacher who spent years studying real ocean life before turning it into art. When he designed Bikini Bottom, every character came from a simple idea. What if the ocean had personalities? What if a crab really did love money because in nature they hoard? What if a starfish loves to stay idle because he loves to ride the ocean waves? What if a sponge actually absorbed everything? Emotions, energy, even curiosity? What if an octopus really did hate chaos because it's a solitary creature by nature? That's it. That's the formula. He was just giving marine life a personality. And the magic is that he did it so well, people started seeing themselves in these sea creatures. I mean, that's the real reason SpongeBob works, right? It's a show about us. Every character is a human instinct in disguise. We've all been SpongeBob, bright and hopeful for no reason. We've all been Patrick, satisfied with the bare minimum. We've all been Squidward, stuck between talent and resentment, and on our worst days, we've all been Mrs. Puff, holding on to sanity just so we don't lose our damn minds. So, when someone comes along and says, they're all just on drugs, honestly, they miss the point entirely. So, maybe the real question isn't whether the drug theory makes sense, it's why we wanted it to. Because the deeper you go, the clearer it gets. This theory isn't about SpongeBob being high. It's about us not being able to handle the idea of someone being happy without a reason. You know what's strange? For a theory that makes no sense, it never really dies. Every few months it resurfaces. Reddit posts, forums, even some YouTube comments. SpongeBob on shrooms. Patrick has a weed stash underneath the rocks. Squidward's in heroin withdrawal. People keep coming back to it like it means something. And maybe it does, but not in the way that we think. Because deep down, the theory isn't about SpongeBob being high. It's about us not believing he could possibly be happy while sober. We live in a time where joy feels suspicious, where everyone's tired, everyone's performing, and everyone assumes anyone smiling too hard must be faking it. We've built a world where burnout is normal and optimism looks like denial. So when we see a character like SpongeBob, someone who wakes up every day smiling, singing, ready to flip burgers for minimum wage, it doesn't feel inspiring anymore, it just feels impossible. Because he's not really chasing it, right? He's not trying to make it. He just is from the get-go. We've been taught that happiness has to be earned, but SpongeBob's joy doesn't come from any of that. It's intrinsic, unconditional. And that breaks our modern logic, because if you're cheerful all the time, you're either delusional, lying to yourself, or according to the internet, high on something. And that's the tragedy of this theory. It only reveals the loss of meaning in us. Because once upon a time, we were all SpongeBob. We all woke up excited for no reason. We all built castles out of cardboard and called it imagination. And somewhere along the way, we forgot what that felt like. But instead of trying to remember it, we tried to explain it away. And that says a lot more about where we are as people than it does about Bikini Bottom. So, maybe SpongeBob was never a symbol for drugs at all. Maybe he was a mirror, a reflection of us and the way we try to explain what we don't understand. It's easier to call it delusion than to admit we've forgotten how to feel it ourselves. But maybe the truth behind SpongeBob was never about substance or satire. Maybe it's about who he is, where he came from, and why, after all these years, we still can't stop trying to figure him out. Because for every wild theory about drugs, darkness, or hidden meanings, there's one mystery that's even stranger. One that questions his origin. Why doesn't SpongeBob look anything like his parents? Was he actually adopted? Or is there something else we've been missing all along? Well, don't worry, I've already solved that one. If you want to know the truth behind SpongeBob's family and why that theory, unlike this one, might actually reveal something about the show, check out my previous video, SpongeBob's Adoption Theory Solved. I'll see you in the next dive.